Hi everyone, it's Lee from Independent Voice and I'm here with Jake from Rivers of Nile. How's it going?
Hey, what's going on, Lee? How you doing, man? Doing pretty good.
Yeah, not too bad. Thank you
Hanging
very
out.
much. Yourself?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so you've recently finished your first bit of supporting the new album, The Work, with the US tour. How did that go?
The recording or the tour? The tour went great. Both went great. um, just the recording itself was, you know, kind of followed the same kind of formula that we do with all the other records down in Lancaster, recording with Grant and Carson at Atrium Studios, and it was a really smooth process. We really kind of had everything figured out in the pocket, and I think it really turned out in a lot of ways than the way we wanted it to. The tour, we couldn't be more grateful that we had the opportunity to actually be out on the road while the album was coming out. And coming right out of like COVID brains prior to jumping into the tour, we were all kind of a little nervous, like what it would be like being back out on the road, and what all the how everyone's going to operate, how everything's going to function between the venues and then the guys in the band and stuff like that. So it was kind of like going on tour for the first time all over again, with like you kind of have this familiarity what it was like before. But honestly, after a week of being out there and playing shows, we all really just everything kind of like not necessarily went back to normal. Like people were being more safe and more conscientious of I guess like sanitary values I guess we have on tour. But it was sick. We all had a great time. Crowd was amazing. All the bands would get along, hanging out, but also being mindful. Um, you know, the album was really received well. While we were out on the road, and again, it was just a really just super happy to have the opportunity to be out there while the record was coming out and not have to wait till next year necessarily to do the first tour. Um, so yeah, it was, I remember telling the guys, I was like, this went by really quick. I felt like it was only a month long tour, and it was really like a month and, 2 weeks long. And usually it's the other way around for me. Usually I get out on the road and I'm like, by the end of the tour, I'm like, all right, I'm ready to go home. And I was ready to keep going. So it was great. It was great.
That must have made a nice change then. Are you normally the type that is really excited to get out on the road, or are you a bit more of like, this is a bit of a chore, but this is the nature of what we do?
I'm kind of the excited type. I'm more of like anticipating, being out on the road and jumping into that the pattern of going out, playing shows, sleeping in the van, hanging out in the venue, eating crappy food, like the whole nine yards. It's it's fun. So I definitely look forward to that process, and I definitely was ready, you know, for this tour when the time came for us to jump back on the road. So yeah.
I bet certainly after the fun of COVID in 2020. So you've already touched on it a little bit with your answer to how the tour went, but how have you found the crowd's reactions to the new additions from the work alongside the rest of your discography?
From the stage, it seemed well received. From the stage, it definitely felt well received. We were only able to play for 30 minutes, and we played Focus, we played Clean, and then at the very end of the tour, we started playing Void. Um, so uh, there was a lot of people were watching us from what I was seeing, on crowd, looking out at the crowd and talking to people after the show. People were really into it, and they really enjoy the album. But there's always going to be like a mix of opinions, but honestly, on the road, it was everyone was just very supportive. very supportive and honest nonetheless, but still supportive. And they really enjoyed, you know, what we had to offer, you know, at this time with the music and the album, you know, the live show. So I think we did well. You know, I could only wish that we were able to play longer and, you know, play more off the record, but the future has a lot of that, you know, in store. So um, yeah, I think it was a positive thing. I think it was a positive thing. You can go online and, you know, you can go down that rabbit hole of reading comment sections on everything. And I really don't like doing that right away. You know, maybe somewhere down the road I'll do that, but like I usually just try to stick to, you know, if we're on the road, let's stick to that for now. You know what I mean? I don't need to divide myself too much with what's going online and what's happening on the road. But yeah, it was a good experience. Yeah.
Great. It must have been quite some comfort for you knowing that the material was going over well live. And certainly if you're going to keep to your own little bubble whilst you're out on the road and not worrying what other people are going to be saying with it. So
Yeah.
similarly, the album's been out for around about a month now. How have you found the reaction to it, and how do you feel it compares with the reaction that you had for the previous album, Where Owls Know My Name?
You know, I think the reaction so far since it's been out for a month now is really well received. You know, it's like this steady momentum of more and more people getting around to having the time to listen to it and check it out. And you know, the really, you know, between the reviews, and I've seen like written reviews and then like reaction reviews, all different kinds of people just talking about it, whether it's someone just like that I know personally that's not online, or a family member, or someone I work with, or you know, just someone who got wind of it. You know, it just it seems to not only be winning people over like our previous record did, but it really is also extending itself out further to more and more people. And you know, going beyond just like a fan level, like there's a lot of people that we look up to, like musicians who have kind of like tweeted or, you know, reposted, you know, some of the tracks or the release stuff, and that's super admirable for us. You know, like still being a young musician, you know, even though it's only our fourth album, to have both sides of the spectrum, you know, supporting what we do. And that's the beauty in this community, is always humbling yourself and showing your support for other artists. And we really feel that right now. We really feel that with this release. And you know, there's like, again, like I said, it's not all beautiful stuff. There's a lot of like different perspectives out there, but you know, I'm not going to sit here and talk about that because it's not really, you know, they're entitled to, people are entitled to believe whatever they want, you know, and that's really cool. The fact that people are talking about us regardless of it being good or bad, people are talking about us, and people are reacting to music, and I think the reviews so far and the album for it is it's been really stellar. So I can only hope for more. I can only hope that it just keeps pushing itself out to like more and more people, and people are able to listen to it. You know, maybe they won't like it, and that's cool too. You know, so yeah.
I suppose
Super
that's
stoked
the
on where it's going.
I suppose
Yeah.
that's the sort of the trick with being like incorporating some more of them supposed experimental bits and pieces that you've done over the years, and certainly the last two records, because it does expand the sound and also expands the reach of the band as well. And obviously you still
Yeah.
have your core sound, the sort of like the techie death metal bits and pieces, but then you've brought in a bit more of the post metally bit, the proggy side of things.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, as a band, we really were brought up around the musical landscape, you know, in our community, the core, you know, the technical death metal, and those are all elements, panels of expressions that Rivers of Nihil, you know, have kind of like used in the early years leading up until these like last few records where we kind of really expanded the dynamic of our musical expression, tried to like really branch out further than just the limited, death metal, tech death kind of vibe, but equally kind of reaching inward to like a part of us individually that's always been influenced and connected by music of those genres and of those tastes. So, and from one angle, from the listener's perspective, kind of like witnessing us and the timeline of Rivers of Nihil go from being like a tech death kind of like a core death metal band into a more progressive, experimental territory. Kind of see that as maybe like, oh, they're changing it up. They're changing their sound. That may be true for sure from how it sees on the outside, and it is. We are changing. But I think that change is a part of us that's always been inside of us, and like it's pretty safe to say now that Rivers of Nihil, we're definitely making our brand and our sound something that we want people to know. You can expect the unexpected, and you can expect it to change, and you can expect it to move and shift and have different expressions. And so I think the latest two records really show a deeper part of us, and the true like a deeper thread of the passion and love we have for music and the art within this music. Yeah, I mean, like I guess it depends on where the person stands from, but yeah, we are the band that we like to keep pushing this field, keep pushing the kind of creative content that we put out, and really just stay true to the art form as it unfolds for us, and not try to put a cap on how it should be expressed or what boundaries or what sounds it should be, kept within. Because in my mind, we will always be a metal band, and we will always have those elements that everyone loves: the tech death, the core elements, the death metal. And I think as the band grows, and maybe as the listeners grow with the band, in order for in my mind, in order for sometimes the listening process to not be exhausted, to not be exhausted from hearing the same thing over and over and over for years and years and years, in order to find greater appreciation in that sound, increasing the diversity within it really helps kind of like establish that balance. So, I mean, I'm not saying those are the reasons why we do it, but kind of like breaking it down in that sense. Yeah.
Never sit still, right?
Yeah, right.
So you've quite neatly rounded on towards the album, so I'd like to talk about kind of like the writing process for it. So for starters, were you as a band, you personally as well, were you ever worried after the success of Owls that you felt the need to equal or top it, or were you all quite relaxed and happy to go with the flow and just see wherever the music took you?
Okay, like from how I interpret the evolution of a writing process from Owls until where we're at now with the work, and in terms of like how it was received by the audience, and then our ability to know where we could go next with this album that we just put out. Like how I kind of gather that is like, we saw the potential of what Owls did, and we saw how well received it was, and that made us feel more comfortable in expressing ourselves more openly and even further than we kind of capped it off with Owls. And in some ways, there's 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 definitely more musical dynamic on the work than there is on Owls. There might be a little bit more crazier, sax experimentation stuff on Owls than there is on the work. But we tried to find a way that we would hone in on I can't say all the elements, but a lot of the okay, maybe not even any of the particular elements that were from Owls, but have certain qualities of the expression that Owls really captured, and not even intentionally recreate them, but allow them to recreate themselves through us as we are creating this next record, knowing that the way Owls was written is a formula that's a part of this new writing process. It's somewhere in there. It's somewhere in there, and it's when people listen to the work, there's going to be parts that maybe we didn't intentionally write to sound like the work. Maybe we did. I'm sorry, to sound like Owls. Maybe we did. But then there's other parts that just kind of that carry over that presence, that have that feeling, that feels like it is something that's extending itself from that previous record. We didn't want to like make an Owls part 2. We didn't want to like overkill. We didn't want to be like, oh well, we set the bar here and now we have to like go crazy and do something insane over here. We wanted to to do what we wanted to do as a band, but we also didn't. We wanted to keep everyone pleased and happy, and not everyone's going to be, but it's gotta try the best. Hopefully that answered.
Well, yeah. certainly from my perspective, it was stellar. So
cool.
So in the press release that accompanied certainly my copy, you state that the writing process began in 2018 and lasted all throughout the previous year. So how did you find writing as a band through the middle of a pandemic? Were a lot of things written beforehand, or was it a case of firing parts across the internet? And did any of the events of last year filter their way into the album itself?
Good question. So I believe before COVID hit, we were kind of wrapping up the touring cycle for Owls, and there might have been only one song and a few other things that were kind of in the works that were completed at that point in time before COVID. And these are just like this was a song. These are songs that were kind of just really giving a general direction of the language and maybe the soundscape that this album would be existing in, and we kind of like sat with that one song and really listened to it and just kind of played around with like the idea of what the rest of the album would be like, with this example already kind of being established. Now moving into COVID time, we just got home from the European tour we did with By Art of Murder, Carnifex, Fit for an Autopsy, I Am, and I think that's it. And we had no idea, of course, anything's going to be shut down. That literally was the last tour we were doing for that record cycle. I didn't have anything planned for like the rest of that, the rest of the time until the record would come out. So come home, everything is shut down. And it just really, the whole, that happening, I felt really bad for a lot of the bands, and, a lot of other things were in motion and were leading up to something that was about to happen that couldn't happen because of COVID. And it was really unfortunate. For us, it really became the perfect, unfortunate, you know, situation that we could have been in to kind of like sit down and finish this writing process. And at that point in time, I think that's really where the majority of the album was written. The majority of the album was finished during COVID. And the way we kind of have 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 always written our music, and it's just become more of this over with each record that we like move into, is like Brody writes pretty much everything, in terms of music with for the band. So um, we he'll send the band in our group chat, you know, what songs he has, and he'll play them back and forth with us, and then we'll go over them, we'll talk about them, we'll say do this, move that, and then Biggs will come our Adam Biggs, bass player, come back to Reading to hang out with Birdie, and we'll write with him, and then they'll send us more stuff, and then we'll talk about it more, and then they'll do some arrangements. We'll kind of get a skeleton for everything, and then talk about like what kind of other sounds, what kind of field sounds we want to have, what kind of instrumentations we want to have, and then we kind of like work through the layers of how this album's going to be molded together. And that's just like a loose explanation of a typical process that we have for writing. And then let's see. So record was finished. We recorded. I think it was like forgetting exactly when we went in the studio. I think it might have been like March. I think it might have been March. But yeah, and when we got in the studio, that was really the first time for a record where we didn't really have much of the lyrical content completed. So it was a whole new relationship of what the lyrics were going to say. And it's interesting, there was this mood, there was this sense of what it's going to say already there, but there were no words. So it was just kind of like building up to this, what are the lyrics going to be? So it really all happened when we were in the studio, and boy, did it just kind of like, come out. And it's one of those. It's the way the lyrics kind of always evolve in relationship for usually between me and Biggs, is like we kind of Biggs writing most of them, but kind of sharing them with me, and kind of playing off, just collaborating on the ideas of where the lyrics are going. And it's one of those things where, like, for anyone reading lyrics first time while the album is still kind of mending itself together, there's not always a complete, crystal clear vision of what the lyrics are apprehendibly saying about the song, until maybe like a week or two later, or until like this version of the recording is done as opposed to the previous one, and then everything just starts to make even more sense. I'm sure Biggs had a very comprehensible understanding what each of these songs were saying, but even for him, after the fact, and especially for myself, more particularly for myself, like I was like, whoa, like these songs are saying this, and just kind of allowing the song to evolve with me. And I thought that was really cool in terms of like being in the studio and recording it, because I really didn't know, I didn't have any opinion or any feelings towards the lyrics yet. So it was a real fresh kind of like, here's the words, go in and do them. And like at first I was kind of apprehensive, like, I don't know any material, like I don't know, I haven't been able to like really like flesh out how this part's gonna like feel in my voice and feel on the record. But I was like, you know what, let's not worry about that, let's just jump in this and record it and see how the sound. It was great. It was a really interesting experience. And I kind of look forward to doing that again in the future that way. Um, it just kind of allows my I don't know, for me, it allowed me to innovate the range and style or the emotion out just without having to think about it beforehand. And so I like that. Yeah. But
It's been quite nice for a change having a bit more of a blank canvas rather than perhaps when Biggs writes the lyrics and goes, right, this is what this particular song's about. This is where my sort of thought and my feelings are. This is how you need to do it. This is what you need to come across. It must have been, as you say, quite refreshing, quite pleasing to be able to go into the studio and go, right, this is just all me, and I can go wherever I think it needs to.
Yeah, definitely. It's like it's he definitely had like the verses mapped out, like for sure. But in terms of like talking about the song before going into the studio and like trying to like really flesh out what it's saying, we didn't really go through that. And it was definitely more of like a simplified, oh, let's just go in here and do what you already know how to do because you've done it so many times before, and don't overthink about it. And I like that. It was nice because I tend to overthink sometimes when I'm in there, and like there's been times where I'll just mess up like the dumbest, like the easiest pattern, like the easiest pattern, just because I'm like overthinking. I'm like, oh, I can't do this, you know what I mean? Like, but then like if I don't know it, it's like, oh, just go do it like that, and it was easy, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know, so yeah.
Yeah, me and you both on that. I'm an overthinker as well. If ever I've done any recordings in the past, yeah, that will usually be something relatively easy, and I will stuff it up just from overthinking about it. Like going, oh, right, this bit's coming up. No, messed it.
Yeah.
So I feel that. I feel you.
Yeah.
So just as a quick aside from the album, like how did you personally and the band themselves like cope during the various lockdowns in 2020, aside from coming out with the work?
You mean like how do we do individually during the pandemic? It was really a much needed kind of break from everything. I mean, like I don't I couldn't. It's a bittersweet thing to say because I know, depending on who's listening, they like, oh, it wasn't a great time. A lot of unfortunate things happened, but for me, it really helped me kind of get a hold of myself a little bit more honestly. It allowed me to see myself a little bit more honestly, and allowed me to like just start building and working, just taking care of things I need to take care of at home. And I was able to just really slow down all the gears, all the moving parts of my life, and just be with my family, be with my dog, and just appreciate life without expecting something right away. And it was kind of nice being able, right after everything shut down. I was working at a bar, and I still work there, but I was working at a bar, only at a bar at this point in time. And when everything shut down, I started landscaping, and it just really worked out. Like I didn't even know that everything was going to shut down prior to getting this job. So it just perfect timing. Got this job, and going from working in a bar till like 2 a.m, to where now I'm outside, waking up at like 7 a.m, going out working with the ground and being outside for like 6-7 hours a day. It was really, really awesome, and it really changed me from the inside out in a way that like reminded me of the things I think when the world is just going so fast, you know what I mean, and like everything is is always moving. It's hard to notice those little things. So having the time to slow down and stop and keep working, but doing it in a place that's outside with the ground, with the plants, like really humbled me and rewired me. Um, and outside of that, I started getting into shape more, working out again more. You know, yeah, like that's pretty much it for me. The other guys, I know Brody was busy, pretty much just writing the whole time. Having like, I know you said outside of that, uh, uh, just see the other guys. I think this is a question we just ask the other guys. You know what I mean? Like, but I'm pretty sure everyone else was making good use of that time away from the world. I gotta say, like, I really enjoyed everything being shut down. I definitely wasn't one of those guys who was like, oh, I can't wait to be inside every day for like a week, or for like a month inside. Uh, but I was happy to see the world just stop. You know what I mean? That was kind of cool. Uh, and yeah, I mean, it's bittersweet to say. It's kind of weird to say this, but like I was like, man, when's the next shutdown gonna happen? I could go for another one. You know what I mean? But yeah.
I mean, it's so nice to actually hear that someone found some form of positivity and light through what was, a pretty crummy year. So yeah,
Yeah.
really, really good to hear that, you found a new job that you really, really enjoy, and you've made, made the time worthwhile to focus on yourself and make yourself happy.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest
Thank
thing
you.
for it, which is awesome. We'll jump back to the album
Yeah.
again. So in the same press release that you put out, one of the most interesting things for me that I found was how you guys found that you'd gotten the album pretty much written out in demo form, but you weren't sure how it was all going to come together coherently. What was it that kind of brought it together in the end?
Are you speaking in terms of like the recording process, or like what were you referring to in terms of like it coming together at the end? I wasn't sure what you meant.
Oh, so in the press release it said that you'd got it written out in demo form, and that there was a bit of a worry, I guess, that the album may not, sort of mix together all, properly. You've got all your songs ready, but whether there was a thread to pull it all together, that's kind of what I meant there, if that makes any sense.
Okay. So like, okay, I think I know what you mean. Yeah, like towards the end of the writing process, is that what you're saying, or the recording process?
Writing process.
Writing process. Yeah, I guess we were kind of we definitely had to move a few things around in terms of what was going to be on the record. There was like one song we actually took out, and then which might be something really sad for a date. I don't know, but we still have it. Didn't scrap it. But actually, the first song, and I think it might have been Episode. I think that might have been the first one. Unless I'm totally messing it up right now, it was a different one. But I think Episode was the first song, and when it came to the end, we were trying to sort out all the details to the record. And I think there was a moment where we weren't going to have that record. We weren't going to have that song on the record. And so it was kind of from what I remember talking to the guys about, we were just really just trying to put everything together correctly, and just make sure it was perfect fit, because this has their name on it, and this is the fourth record that everyone is like there's a lot of anticipation behind this, so we really wanted to make sure it was polished and exactly the way we wanted it. Because like in the past, we've released records, and we're obviously we released them. We like they were pretty confident we liked them all the way up until we say, hey, let's go ship it out. But every artist goes through this. I'm sure they'll release a record, and then they'll listen to it, and they'll go back, be like, I wish I could have done a little bit differently. I think that kind of being what you're referring to, maybe towards the end, we kind of really just wanted to make sure all the pieces fell into place correctly. Um, and I think we're happy with it. Like I'm sure there's something in the record that we'll be like, oh, I could have done that better, or I like to go back and re-record that part. But yeah, everything I think is the perfect fit.
Yeah, well, I certainly agree. But then the other thing that you can always think about is that a record is just that little timestamp of where you were. And yeah, of course, everyone will always look back at bits and pieces that they've done and go, oh, I could have done that better. But that was just where you are at that given time. So
yeah, that is true. That is true. You can't know what you don't know, and you can't see, what you can't see in terms of like something that you wish you would have thought of in the future. Like you can't beat yourself up for that. I mean, when it comes to you in the future, you can use that idea then. But you're right. Yeah, good point. Yeah.
So you talked about it a little bit earlier with this mix of perhaps Rivers of Nile's old school tech death kind of stuff and the more progressive bits and pieces that you've now allowed to bloom over the years. Do you think, as the work is the winter album of the cycle, do you think the theme helps that kind of flourish a bit more?
Yeah, I think so. It kind of keeps everyone anticipating the next album in a weird, unconscious way. Because, like, let's just say you don't like the first record. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, well, that record sucks, and like, I might even agree with you. Like, I'm like, that record sucks, but maybe in a weird way, in the back of that person's mind, they'd be like, well, there's that really interesting theme kind of like reoccurring from album to album. Let's see how the next one fleshes out, And if that's not a good enough reason, I think the fact that like it's the theme being the fourth seasonal, and place that we can express ourselves, that's present in most of our lives around where we live, so to have this ever-changing kind of like seasonal landscape in our music, I think it does kind of keep people interested for reasons that maybe that aren't obvious, you know what I mean, or maybe they are, like there's also like within each season, each listener has the capacity to not only hear the lyrics and hear the music, but to hear the way their imagination and the way their feelings and emotions are able to like reflect through the listening process, and they kind of create their own story. You know what I mean? And when you create your own story with an album that's telling you a story, and then there's like this background theme that's kind of like holding this seasonal presence, then you kind of create a special little place, where you can always go back to and you remember it and you feel that feeling, and like so I think in a lot of ways, like the album, you're having the seasonal concept, it does a lot of different things. It does a lot of different things that might keep people interested, or I don't know, if you're not from this planet and you don't have the four seasonal things, you might be like, fuck it, I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know. That wasn't a good joke, but like you know what I mean, like I think it's something that like the seasonal concept, it has an element to it that is able to keep people who aren't sure whether or not they like it a little still curious enough to go back and check it out again, you know. And I also think two themes kind of are like glue, you know. They're kind of like the transparent glue, the thing that's binding, you know, the you know, everyone's attention span from one record to the next, you know. Um, and I think the themes kind of serve as like a space, you know, space that we can all kind of you know, enjoy the music with, and enjoy our listening process with. So I don't have anything more to say than that.
That's a good answer, and it's interesting to kind of get that kind of perspective, but also from the listener's point of view, rather than like you as a band member who writes within the confines of a particular season. So interesting to hear the thought that the next season or a little element from the current season would keep someone there. Yeah. So you mentioned story and also theme, and I'm gonna try and get a little info. So on the topic of story, I know that the four albums have seen a bit of a story arc, and I'm aware that the winter side of the story hasn't quite been revealed yet. So can you tell us what that story is? What's happened with the character that was on Owls, or is that something that, or better yet, what's your interpretation of it?
Okay, yeah, the work is telling a story that is telling two different stories at the same time, and it's telling a story that can't be told unless there's a listener listening to it to hear their own story. You know what I mean? So like, it's a story that kind of needs involvement in order for it to be a story. You know, and I know that sounds cliche, like, oh yeah, you gotta listen to the record in order for it to make sense. Like, no, like, I mean, like, it's because it's called the work. Like, because it's called the work, it represents a fundamental function that, whether you listen to us or you listen to metal, or whether you're just, you know, an ordinary layperson who's doing the 9 to 5, and you know, wherever you are in life, the work's trying to represent person's time spent creating something, making something, you know, building something. But it's also not just the story about the work he's doing, but the process of doing it, and the art of doing it, and what comes out of it, and the relationship with that in which you're doing it with. You know, why are we doing this? Because we care about it, because this is something that like allows us to express ourselves. And you know, sometimes it feels like it's really hard, and sometimes it feels like, you know, ready to give up, and sometimes it feels like, you know, this is the wrong thing. I should be, you know, not like it's the wrong thing, but like I should be doing something else. You know what I mean? But then you remind yourself of, like, you know, what does this do for me? What is putting in time to build something, whether it's a relationship, whether it's you know, an art form, whether it's you know, a skill, a hobby, a career, whatever, you know, like, these are all things you have to really work for, and you have to really put in time, and you can't, if you half-ass it, you're not going to be bullshitting anyone else but yourself. And maybe you will be bullshitting other people, but you're definitely going to be bullshitting yourself. And so for me, the story is really trying the title is really like a mantra in my mind, and it's kind of like the staple that is in, you know, when sometimes we're having a difficult time getting through something, or whatever it is, you just gotta remember that work goes somewhere. It's going somewhere. It's leading somewhere, and the journey on the way there is a part of that process. So what feels like work to one person could be an art form to another. What feels like something that's really hard and exhausting could be easy, could be like a walk through the park for someone else. So I like the title itself kind of always, because it's always staying true to the harsher elements of the grind of the building process. So it always reminds us what, that we have to put in this time, and it is always going to be this at the foundational level, regardless of what it is we're doing, whether it's making music, like I said, whether it's anything else. So I think the work is representing that, and as for a country, as for a world, and living in different places with a lot of different things going on, and yet we're all kind of going through a similar thing. Um, it's kind of allows us to feel connected in a world that's very distorted and very divided and very opinionated. And I don't think these answers are obvious because they're mine. So this is how I translate the work, But I just see it as kind of like the patriotic undertone of what 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 keeps this momentum going. What is the momentum that keeps this going? And um and I think that's what the album represents. The album represents the band's journey from the first album all the way up until this record, and all of the little things that we had to go through to kind of get here. And the songs individually, like what they mean, that's more, that's something that like Biggs would really have specific answers for it. I don't know if he's ready to give them up, but it's always interesting to hear the interpretation of what someone thinks about what an album means, especially if it's an album that is based on the impression of being open to interpretation. Because at that point, it really allows the theme to be multidimensional. It allows the theme to have more than one meaning, and it means that the theme is symbolic. And it also means that the work represents something, means something that is symbolic. It's the work represents something that is just I guess the work is kind of like a mantra that's describing something that can keep finding new ways of being described. It can keep finding new ways to be identified, or to find like how it can be relevant, in our life, or in my personal life, or in your personal life. So it's symbolic. And symbolic is something that has endless meanings depending on who's looking at it and who's listening to it. And I think that's, maybe I went too deep with this. Like, I don't know. Like, okay, cool. But yeah, I think that's kind of like when I think about this question, when I think about like what this record means to me, it's on an even deeper level, the record is reminding me of a very essential, you know, component to this process, you know, and uh, and even though I'm going to say that is the work, in saying that, I'm pointing towards something else. I'm pointing towards a process that only I would know, and only you would know for you, you know, and only for the next, you know. So that's that. I think that's even a deeper thread. And then you listen to this record, or you read the lyrics, or you look at that title. You know, it can really stand out to each person differently, depending on how far that person wants to go with it. Um, is the album that big of a thing? Is the title that deep of a thing? I guess it can be if you want it to be. You know what I mean? And like it's so yeah, that's my answer.
Great answer. And I liked the idea of it being symbolic in the suggestion that there's inspiration in, you know, what you can find, what you can interpret from the album yourself, whether that's you know, a simple mantra of, right, you need to do the work, you need to do this, you need to power through, or if it's something completely different, it's completely down to the individual. So yeah, great answer. So
Yeah.
coming to themes, so across the 4 albums, you've got your terrestrial songs. Now, one thing that I really thought was a lovely little touch from the end was in the terrestrial 4, the work, you had the same riff that was in Thor back on the first album.
Yeah.
What was the decision behind that?
I think we really wanted to kind of make the season go full circle. You know what I mean? Like we wanted to really have this be not just an album, but a 4-album cycle that truly was able to go full circle, where the first album started all the way from where, you know, last album ended. Um, so that was something that I think we planned on doing at the very beginning of the first record. Like we kind of knew that we were gonna bring Thal Black back and kind of let it creep into the end of Terrestrial 4, and it was it kind of allows the music to be eternal. And it's just on a loop. So it's somewhere right now on a loop forever. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, I heard that and it just brought a smile to my face, thinking, oh, like it. They brought it back. They brought it full circle.
Yeah.
So another thing to note on the record is that there's an increased level amount of vocal attack. So how did you, Adam, and Jared divide up all your vocal juices across the album?
Well, I think this is something that was like really mapped up inside like Biggs' head, you know, like a lot of the like all my parts written out, and at the studio going there, I did all my vocals first, and then Biggs came in and he laid down all his singing vocals. Like this is something that he kind of had mapped out himself, and I think from him to Jared, there might have been very specific things that Biggs already had in mind that she wanted Jared to do, like indefinitely. But then there was like a lot of stuff that I think we kind of like between Grant, Jared, and Biggs, they kind of like came up with in the studio, especially with like harmonies, and you know, we're also like being able to hear the record differently than we have been before, you know, and I think it allowed them to like really like, oh, we know it'd be cool. Let's do this part, you know. So I think a lot of the singing vocals really were created for sure, like in the studio, like when we were recording them. Yeah.
Great. The other thing to note with the vocal side of things is the increased use of clean vocals. So we all know that metal, by and large, it seems to have a bit of an allergic reaction to clean vocals. So was there ever a time, even back with owls, that you were thinking, should we really be doing this? Was there ever any worry, or were you just thinking, nope, this is what it's going to be. It's going to be great.
I think naturally we worried, probably worrying more so like on what the reaction would be, like what people would think about it, whether, and maybe like whether or not it would work. But I think at the same time we really just we wanted to do it because we knew it was just appropriate thing for us to do at this point in time in the record. Um, and you know, I only did like one clean vocal part I think on the last record, and like I have like a lot of talking vocals and stuff on this record, which is like a little bit more than I think you know uh, Owls has for sure. And it was, there's definitely a lot of experimenting with with not only singing but the talking vocal stuff. Um, and I think finding that sound again for Biggs, and Jared just always like hits the note with whatever pitch is needed for the vocal parts. Jared just happens to know exactly how to hit it and can usually go right for it. Like I know for my talking vocals, and maybe Biggs, I'm not sure, but I know we're really kind of trying to we were trying to find that sound again on the work, and in a way that felt natural, didn't feel forced, didn't feel like we were like living up to the what the previous record did, and we had to like double up and make it extra, whatever Al was. But yeah, the vocals were definitely a building. Like we were building them as we were like trying to figure out how they were going to work, and kind of also playing off of what Grant thought at the same time. I think that really had a lot to do with it. Like Grant kind of like whether Biggs and Jared were doing a part with the clean stuff, we kind of like look at Grant, see what he thought, kind of deal, and work off that. So it was new territory, more or less, to try and say. There was new territory, even though we kind of have that a little bit of experience with Owls. It still feels new because we haven't done it enough yet to like really know if this sounds right, So yeah.
So you mentioned the producers Grant and Carson. How much of an input do they have with just everything overall? So do they have much of an input with things like writing, or is it mainly in production or in arrangements?
Pretty much like, I mean, anytime they have an idea, it's worth putting out there. We wouldn't be the kind of people to be like, oh no, don't tell us what you think. But like it's one of those things where like if anyone has an idea, usually when the idea emerges, someone usually kind of who has that idea feels excited about it, and they just bring it up, offer it. Sometimes we'll go with it, sometimes we won't. Most of the time we do. Most of the time, if Grant or Carson has an idea or something, it's usually they're seeing something that the artist can't see, and needs that professional, outside the band perspective to really kind of give us that element that we're missing, that we're not seeing. So we're always open to what they think or writing stuff.
Yeah, clearly a mark of a good producer that they're able to offer their opinion and also to, like you say, see what the artist can't at that particular point. So it's great to hear that they've been able to help create some great records down the years. So we've mentioned earlier that as a band you're not particularly shy about doing some form of experimentation, whether that's with clean vocals or with saxophone, as on Owls and on The Work. Has there ever been a moment where you've worried that something might not work, or it might be a bit too risky? We touched on the expansion of the audience over the course of time with, development of certain aspects of the sounds. Has there ever been a kind of a worry thinking, well, this might not work at all? Or are, again, you guys quite confident going, no, this is what we're going to do and we'll stay the course?
I'm sure we've all had those moments of contemplating whether or not something would work, but I guess it's knowing whether or not the part of us that thinks something's not going to work is really just us being insecure, or is it like the part of us that's actually like has some information outside of what we're creating that is like reinstating that it won't work. Because let's be real here. I mean, like, anytime someone says something won't work when it comes to like creating an art form, is pretty much determining on like how much that person believes in what they're doing and the skill level that they have to do it. I'm pretty safe to say I think that guys, we can all do what it is that we need to do, whether it's something vocally, musically, and I think with this last record and the previous one, like we really have been able to show ourselves and the fans that we can move in this direction, and we can do it in a way that feels natural for us, and maybe it feels like it was kind of already there in terms of like the way it sounds on the record and how it sounds natural. Could it how would I word what I'm gonna say? Like I feel like sometimes you listen to a band, I can't think of anyone in particular, but like you listen to a band who makes that drastic jump, to put clean vocals in their record, and so sometimes it doesn't. And again, it's a situational thing. It depends on who's listening and their opinion of the band. But sometimes it doesn't always fit that spot. It doesn't always work. Sometimes it doesn't always work. And fortunate enough for us that I think Biggs and Jared and myself, we thought about it long and hard, and we saw where we know our limits, and we know what parts of our potential can still be pushed and still be kind of like working on developing itself. And I think with the clean vocals and stuff like that, those are avenues that we're still developing itself. So I mean, yeah, I'm sure we were definitely at a point where we were like, I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know if it's going to actually translate over well. But we also think about it from like I feel like if we adopt that opinion too much, we're adopting the mindset of a biased fan, or fan that like, and not anything particular, but like in the sense of like of just not being open to new possibilities, not seeing new things working out, or no, that won't work. And that's kind of what that is. That's adopting that mindset, and like, and as the artist or the person, the people who are creating what is being listened to, we can't allow ourselves to be overruled by the uncertainty of what we can and cannot do until there's enough trial and error out there of it either working or not working. And yeah, so I think it works. I mean, like, if any of us were to record something and it sounds terrible, we would all tell each other, and we probably wouldn't let anyone ever hear it. But fortunate enough, I don't think we have that problem. So I think everything's good. Good to go.
Yeah, it's great that you've got the confidence to be able to be honest with one another over the course of an album cycle and just the general writing process, to try things, and if it doesn't work, just say that, yeah, this hasn't happened, let's try something else. One moment that would surprise probably a lot of long-term fans was the song Maybe One Day, which is a little bit more ballad-like. How did this one come about, and how did you kind of approach it from a vocal point of view?
Well, this song, this song was definitely written to be obviously the most melodic, which is different than all the rest of the songs on the record. I would this it's just definitely not a me question, because I didn't write much of anything on this song, but being there, recording it, witnessing it coming together, and like seeing the contrast of what the rest of the album was all the way up until this song. It was a really interesting process. It was interesting in the sense of like, I knew that this was the first time we've ever recorded or written anything like this, and it's truly beautiful, and gives Rivers of Nihil its first, musical dip into this, the soundscape of serenity, and just blissful melody, kind of in a really soft, kind of like Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd kind of way. That's so for the vocals, it was pretty simple. It was just, there's a few parts towards the end that I'm kind of in there, and the rest of it is Sharon and Biggs, and they did a phenomenal job on that song. It really, at that point in the record, when that song comes in, it really kind of sets the mood, because of all the other moving parts of the record that are happening, and how it's kind of where you end up landing by that point in time in the record. I think that song does what it's supposed to do correctly, and it does it well. And I think sometimes, if this is separate from what you asked, but this kind of came to mind as we're talking about it, like, a lot of times people will like look at each song individually and be like, why is there so much diversity? Why, like, who are you trying to impress, or what are you trying to do? And it's like, if you listen to the album as one whole piece, then understanding why each song sounds the way it does kind of makes so much more sense. Because maybe not everyone's records, but like, I know this record for sure has the ability for each song to be its own little place, and that you can like, it's kind of like stepping into a place that's built of sound, and you can like listen to each song by itself, and it'll make sense and it'll be fine. But then you can like listen to the whole record, and each song, based upon where it's at and how that song sounds and the melody that it has, complements the rest of the rest of the record based upon the formation that it's been written in. So you know, I just want to say that was an interesting thought that came to mind when I'm thinking about that particular song. Maybe one more day, but yeah, it's a beautiful song. It's makes you tear up and want to call up somebody you love and have a moment with them. But yeah, it was really fun. It was rewarding, really rewarding to be like, wow, we our name is on this song. It's totally different than anything we've done. So I love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it certainly pushes the boat out. And one of the things that I've always liked about records, and certainly have liked about Rivers of Nile's records, is the variety. It's not all one thing or the other. And maybe one day is an absolute prime example of that, because it just brings it, brings the speed down, brings, and you said it earlier, sets the tone for that little segment, and depending on where you are at that particular given moment in time, it can hit you differently and put you in a particular mindset as well. So yeah, it's a lovely inclusion. Definitely took us by surprise when hearing it. It works, beautifully within the confines of the record. So thinking about the work as a body of work,
right?
For you, what have you got a particular song, passage, vocal performance, etc., that you are especially proud of, or do you just see the whole thing as this? This is my baby. This is amazing.
Oh, yeah, good question. Oh, anything particularly proud of in the record? You know, there's definitely some parts that really stand out that like I'm just like that's sick, and like what what the lyrics are saying and what it's doing, what the lyrics are doing that I don't think we've done as an artist before. Like definitely Clean, the beginning of Clean, and what that really is trying to express, like the lyrics in the beginning of that song. It's really saying what every artist, in my mind, what every artist who's really spent their whole life working really hard at doing this and just kind of trying to express in their own way, in a certain way, of being that, we put time and effort into all of this, and to that moment that we're on stage, to have your time and have your patience and to spend the money to come out and to be with the artists or to be with the fans, you know, that is that is that is what we live for. When we're out on the road, and that's what we do this for, and that is where you know so much of the magic is ignited between from the listeners to the musicians. So lyrically, that part is a lot of fun to sing live, to do live, and it really kind of like ignites a room, gets the vibes going. But I'm really just proud of the whole album. The whole album is really just my performance, and then just also the creative, being a part of the project, and knowing that this is what it sounds like, and I'm just proud of it overall. Uh, there's just a lot of really good stuff on there that I could go back and listen to, and still find new things, not new things, but hear them in a different way, and find more ways to appreciate them than I have before. And yeah, I think just a lot to be proud of. Not just myself, but from my other bandmates and everyone who's behind this and helping us move in this direction. So um, yeah, and I'm very happy, very proud of my performance, and I definitely remember saying this to myself. I was like, this is hands down the best performance I've done on on any of the records. And you know what? Like, I'm super critical, and I'm I like listen to myself maybe a little too much when in terms of trying to figure out how I need to like make things sound better for the next record. Um, and I think with this one, there's very, very little spots where I'm like, oh, I wish I would have done that differently, or wish it would sound that way. I actually feel pretty confident and really happy about my performance, and so that I'm not going to play favorites then. You know what I mean? If I can walk away from the record and be like, the whole thing sounds cool for me, that says a lot. So that was a good question. Yeah.
Great. Well, yeah, should be proud. It's a really, really good record. So
Okay.
next couple of questions, I'll just preface it, entirely up to you if you wish to answer, but just wanted to touch on one of the things that you've talked about recently, which is your experiences with your hearing difficulties. So you'd recently discussed it, and you'd actually brought it up firstly during the Monarchy album cycle, but how have you found the metal community's reaction to you kind of talking a little bit more in depth about it in support of the album?
Yeah. What? Say that one more time. I'm sorry. I didn't catch the last part of that.
Oh, sorry. So you recently talked about your hearing difficulties, and just wanted to know, how have you found the metal community's reaction to it after you've discussed it?
It seems to be a really, they seem to receive it well, and honestly, I haven't really overextend myself to like see what people are saying, but from what I gather, from what I've heard, from what I can hear, just joking, but it's been a positive thing. It's an inspirational thing. It's been something that I feel like just even for people who don't have a disability, you know what I mean, like, or don't have this particular situation at hand. To know that there can be things that kind of get in each person's individual way, and you can still keep going. And it doesn't put a title on what you can and can't do. It just shows the world that, like, we're capable of doing whatever you put your mind to, or put your heart to. And for me, I think the community really received it well, and it's kind of one of those things too. Like, I don't really think I talked about it too much prior to this record, so it's like the first time really. I might have brought it up like one or two times before, and it wasn't for any reason to not bring it up. I guess it just felt relevant, or the timing felt appropriate now with the record coming out and everything. But I think I can only hope. I can only hope that it means something. I'm not just making videos talking about it for no reason. But it's also good to kind of like be able to express that kind of stuff, to the world. And talk about it, because it really is an interesting twist to someone in my position, playing metal, and particularly metal. So yeah, I can only hope it inspires people. I can only hope it has a good effect on the world, you know. Um, and if it doesn't inspire you to go out and do what you think you can't do, I hope it at least inspires you to wear earplugs because you don't want to go deaf, you know. But I mean, like outside of that, it's, you know, it's like I hope for the best. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to hear that it's been, you know, a positive experience since you've discussed it a few months ago. And I was going to ask whether you would kind of see yourself as a bit of a role model. I realise that sounds a little bit cliche, but you've already stated that you find that you hope at least that in discussing it, that it may be inspirational to people who might have similar experiences, or, you know, even to those that don't and just want to get out and do something. So that's a really positive thought, and you know.
Yeah, I think, you know, for sure, absolutely. Like you know, like yeah, you know, it's I feel not in a sense of like not in a sense of like, oh, I'm kind of like a role model for people, but yeah, in a sense of like looking after people and kind of like setting a good example for people, and also, you know, knowing that, like, see, when I was younger, you know, like I was younger, it wasn't easy for me to like get have friends grow up, and I'm sure lots of people have gone through similar situations, but like something that was always clear to me is that like I always wanted to make sure that like people I hung out with and people I surround myself with knew that, like, you know, they should feel confident with themselves. You know, they shouldn't second guess themselves. And you know, because I had to deal with that a lot. I was picked on a lot. I was made fun of a lot when I was a kid for all kinds of weird reasons. I'm a weird guy, you know what I mean? But it's okay at the end of the day. And I just remember telling myself, you know, growing up, I want to be a good role model for people, in one way or another, in the fashion that you, if you're passionate about what you do and you believe in what you do, and you know, regardless of what setbacks you may have or what roadblocks may get in the way, you know, for you, um, that that can be make that person all the more inspiring, and that can make, and not for those reasons, but like, but as as a consequence of someone who has a disadvantage being able to continue to move forward in a world that has a lot of advantages and disadvantages at the same time. You know, it means a lot, and when people see that and when people notice that, it might extend out to them, it might inspire them, it might remind them of their own worth, and remind them of the forgotten value that maybe they have, you know. And like, I just know, like, you know, growing up and going to shows and going to these music events, they definitely help facilitate a level of confidence, a level of like inspiration, a level of like of something to look forward to, a level of something to anchor the arc of my future aspirations in a direction, you know. And um sometimes every now and then to say something that can be a little inspiring, or to, you know, to look out for another individual can go a long way, you know. And you never know who's listening, you never know what one person's going through, you know. And you know, my mom always said, treat people the way you want to be treated. And like, uh, yeah, so I, you know, like when I talk about this kind of stuff, or doing interviews or hanging out around people, yeah, kind of have that in the back of my mind. You know, you want to it's not that that's my motive, but like, yeah, it's there. You know, you're I'm aware of it. Aware of how what I say or how I am may influence other people around me. You know, and yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. You know, got to handle it delicately. You know, great power comes with great responsibility.
No, just such a great phrase to use.
Thank
Right,
you.
but so true as well. And you know, you also said, you know, treat people as you would want to be treated, and you know, could a lot more people could do by following your example there. So we'll move briefly back again towards the album. So the work is your fourth. Cast your mind back to the Conscious Seed of Light days. Could you envisage the sharp ascent and the claim that you guys have found yourselves earning over the years?
Yeah. So the Conscious Seed of Light. What was the question? I'm sorry.
So it's just, could you back when you guys first put out the Conscious Seed of Light, could you have envisaged the acclaim and the ascent from, you know, you guys just starting out on Metal Blade, and then here you are, the work, and you know, all the your 4 albums have been widely celebrated, especially the most recent 2. Did you see yourself in this position?
I you know, it's a complicated answer because yes, and but like when someone says yes outright, they're like, oh, like you just see yourself like making it there, like, well, good for you, you know what I mean? Like, no, but like it's like a part of that's a fundamental aspect of what I think allows this journey to facilitate itself is having a vision that regardless of what happens down here where the work is actually happening, you know what I mean? That vision, well, nothing can touch or destroy that vision, you know, and it has to stay crystal clear. You have to keep it, and things will happen along your path that might seem like they're in conflict with that vision. You know, sometimes you have to protect it. You have to be careful that you're not pushing it away. And there's definitely times, you know, going from the Conscious Seed of Light all the way up to where we're at now, where that vision kind of like may have lost sight. But there's 5 of us, you know, so we're all kind of like, we all kind of either have our own reception to that vision, and we're all kind of like feeding, you know, contributing our passion and our aspirations to where we want it to go, and to keep that vision, to keep that dream alive, while still at the same time trying to work through the grosser elements that'll really make it come alive. And it's a tricky process. There's been a lot of like, there's definitely been a lot of uncertainty, a lot of like, you know, desperation, a lot of times where I wasn't sure. I mean, even I know there was a period where I was like questioning whether I wanted to do it anymore. Like a couple albums ago, and you know, it's so easy to give up on something, but it's not easy to not give up. You know what I mean? And like, in the sense that like, to not give up on that vision, to not give up, and to not allow the vision to become disrupted, you know, to lose the value or the vibrance or the sacred kind of presence that it has inside. You know what I mean? And what it means to you. You know, we want to keep that part alive as long as we can, and the longer we can keep that alive, with the band for us, like it, for me, like it really has helped the believing process of this journey work so much smoother. Like if I can see where we're going, um, it really, no matter what happens, no matter what problems may occur, because I have that vision, I'm trusting something. I'm keeping myself grounded in that, and that makes me willing to work through anything that comes my way. Do we always have that vision? Is it always there? No, you know. And I think that's a part of the process too, is to be able to see if you can do it without always having it there, you know, without always having it there, kind of like reminding you, you know, that this is what you need to keep in mind. Um, so yeah, it's like walking across a tightrope, you know, right? You gotta you're trying to keep all these things balanced, and and what's the word, like, uh, trying to contribute and keep everything operating, and all the moving parts functioning the way it needs to, um, without losing yourself, without exhausting your creativity, without destroying relationships, without going to debt, without, you know, without doing a million things, you know, and it's not easy, but you know, at the same time, if someone's listening to this who's just on the beginning of their journey, you know, like, I wouldn't be thinking about this stuff as much. And it's not that like being aware of it is a bad thing. I just know that when I was in it, and I'm like trying to really cultivate and build this dream, believing in it and being there with the process is the most important thing. Not being apprehensive, not taking too much time to think about about certain things that just need, you know, action tended to right away. So um, yeah, you know, definitely with a combination of the two, you know, having the vision there, and then also having it be pulled away, and having to like really just be a human with it, and work blindly, you know, for a little bit, and just trust your instincts. You know, so yeah.
Great answer. Great answer. You mentioned vision. So we've got to the fourth album. Do you think you've achieved what you set out originally with the seasonal tetralogy?
I think so, man. I think so. I think, you know, this journey has come. It's definitely not come to an end. You know, in a lot of ways, it feels like it's returning back to another beginning. You know, um, but I think that we have really done what we anticipated to do up until this point in time with this record, and I hope we just are able to continue doing more of this and continue to keep going further with it. And yeah, it's beautiful. It's I you know, I've thought about this. I don't think I've thought about it and the way that I thought about it now, because you asked me a question about it, and now I'm actually having to answer it. So I'm thinking about it differently, and it is a really, you know, I'm like, the circle has gone full. You know, it's gone full circle with this now, and it really does feel, at least this part. You know, who's to say what's going to happen after this? But at least this part has feels completed, and even though there's a lot of touring still left to do with this album cycle, so maybe it's a partial completion in terms of like the album being recorded and released, but there's still a lot of other parts to it that still need to happen. But it feels good. It feels great, and could be more happy to be sharing it with people and talking to you about it. So it's a great feeling. You know what I mean?
Awesome. So, not wanting to take away from the success that you're enjoying at the moment, and you've already touched on it, but do you know, has there been any talk of what the future may hold for Rivers of Nihil, or are we still a bit too early?
I think it's a bit too early, but I think that's kind of cool because we can, at that point in time, we can only expect the unexpected, and that can be a really curious, mysterious thing, and that kind of also brings out a lot of excitement. So I like that element to it, not knowing of what's going to happen next. Um, and it makes me all the more eager to kind of see what this band creates next. I know we have a good amount of time to tour before that even comes into focus. But yeah, I'm really excited for that. Really excited for when that time comes. But right now, we're just gonna focus on touring, and with this record, and try to get out to as many places, many people as we can. With the world being the way it is.
Yeah, I can certainly say I'm excited to see what the future holds for you guys. Last couple of questions before I'll let you go and get some rest. But you guys were due to come over to the UK and the EU, and as we were saying briefly before we started, that we found out that today the Faces of Death tour was being postponed for a year due to the ongoing pandemic. Are you disappointed, or are you a little relieved that you're not going to be coming to the UK or Plague Island, as we're referring to it as sometimes?
I'm definitely disappointed before anything, but I'm also relieved that the tour is rescheduled. So I think at this point, anytime anything happens, it's never just feeling one thing. There's a million feelings that come with it. So like with this, I was really like, I was upset knowing that it was going to cancel, but I knew that like it would be rebooked, and given the situation, and with the lineup that we have, it just seemed better to wait and wait for it to be rescheduled for next year. And it does suck. I really wanted to get over there and keep the gears moving, but I before the gears move, everyone has to be safe, and things have to be right in place in order for that to happen. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to keep going with it. So yeah, bummed out about it for sure. But I'm very grateful that be able to see everybody and play for everyone next year, and still have the same great lineup. So it's gonna be sick, and everyone's gonna be even more eager and ready for it. So like, even though these things, when they happen, they suck. They really do suck. Usually, when it does happen, then it makes it that much more fun, and builds it up a little bit more. So.
Yeah, for sure. It must. Yeah, I appreciate it. It must be disappointing to not be able to do the shows that you intended to, but by the same token, health and safety has got to come first above all else. So
yeah.
Yes. Hopefully once the situation dies down a bit, we'll look forward to seeing you next year.
Absolutely. I look forward to being back there. I love playing in the UK. I love playing Europe. Every time we go there, I'm always excited to the max, and super bummed when we have to leave. So So
what, even with the rainy weather that we have?
what? Say it.
Even with the rainy weather that we have?
Yes, yes. Oh, I mean, it's raining here. I love. There's nothing better than being on the double decker with like your thick ass European UK coffee and like the rain coming down. Like that is and cozy inside the bus. Oh, that's just nice. That's nice. That's a good feeling. So.
That's a lovely thought. Never pictured that. Again, so for those that would have been coming for their first Rivers of Nihil show, what could they have expected, and what can they look forward to for next year when you guys do come over?
Okay. Well, next year, I think because we obviously have more time now, so like really plan even further ahead than we were able to for what would have been the European tour. I know we're going to play much more material than we were able to on the US dates, and I'm not going to promise this, but I think we kind of are anticipating or trying to do bigger production with this live show, and they can expect the usual vibe that Rivers of Nile brings, and we're gonna have a lot of fun, and we just look forward to seeing everybody and to having all the bands on the package. We're definitely gonna bring the work, and we're gonna do the work, and we're gonna go hard. So I think it's gonna be a great time, and really look forward to just playing as much of the record, if not all of it. We're not sure yet. For you guys when we come over.
Amazing. Well, I look forward to seeing you there when you guys come over. So, right, well, reached basically the end of all the questioning. I could talk to you for hours, Jake, because you've been awesome. You've given such wonderful answers, and
thank you.
Really lovely in detailed answers as well. So
thank you, Lee.
Yes, this has been wonderful, and but I'm sure you are quite keen to go and
I appreciate you. You have great questions yourself. You can't have good answers without good questions. So,
thank you, sir.
Thank you, Lee. I appreciate your time, and thank you for having me, man. It was good.
Not at all. So, would there be anything you'd like to say to our independent voice readers?
Well, let's see. Continue to do what you guys love. Support the bands and the art that you create, or that you're passionate about. And we hope to see everybody healthy and eager to go out and have a good time at a live show this time next year. And we're really grateful for everyone who's picked up the album, and thank you for everyone who's still checking it out. So yeah, be safe, and see you guys next time.